Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for IFAW and the Southeast North Atlantic Right Whale Collaboratory's breakout session today. My name is Greg Riley. I represent IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare in the Southeast. And I have a few slides to share before I turn it over to our participants. The topic today is harnessing the power of community and technology to protect North Atlantic right whales. Our panelists today, of course, myself from the International Fund for Animal Welfare. We have our Collaboratory members, Candace Whitney, who's the director of the Amelia Island Whale Ambassadors in Amelia Island, Florida. Julie Albert is the director of the Right Whale Sighting Network for Blue World Research Institute. Courtney Reich is the Coastal Director for Georgia Conservancy. Francine Kershaw, Senior Scientist for NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council. And Moses Caloro, who's the President of Maritime Information Systems. Our collaboratory started last winter. About 6 of us met together on Tybee Island at the Tybee Island Marine Science Center for a day-long discussion of how we could join forces and collaborate on efforts to protect this endangered species. Since that meeting of, I think, 6 individuals, we've grown to almost 30 members, stretching from North Carolina to Florida. And this collaboratory, this partnership has been incredible for us all to share our work and find ways to help each other. The membership is diverse. The organizations are diverse. So not only are they diverse in location, in sort of their area of operations, if you will. IFAW is international. We have other international organizations. We have United States national organizations. We have regional. And we have local grassroots organizations as well.
So what time do you want to go to do event?
If everyone could mute, please. We've got a couple of voices that are bleeding through. Our collaborative efforts stretch across a variety of projects, everything from trying to encourage on-demand gear in the black sea bass fishery to conduct outreach, increase awareness of the plight of the right whale, education, and even festivals and Savannah's Whale Week. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Candace Whitney of the Amelia Island Whale Ambassadors to talk about the efforts there in North Florida. Candace?
Hello, my name is Candace Whitney with the Amelia Island Whale Ambassadors. We are a small grassroots organization located in Northeast Florida. Looking at the slide on the left, which is the right whale migration pattern, we are located on Amelia Island, right in the heart of the right whale calving grounds. A few times a year, we can actually look out from the beach and see mothers nurturing their new calves. You'll note in the sightings banner that over 50 right whales were sighted along our 12-mile coastline last year. Yet the vast majority of our community were not even aware that right whales and their babies hung out in our waters every winter.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
That's me. Sorry. Fortunately, we've had the Right Whale Festival here on Amelia Island for many years, which is a fantastic venue to spread the right whale story. Last year's attendance exceeded 20,000 people. It looks like this year there'll be more. There'll be over 100 exhibitors. Our mission is education and awareness all year long. And last year, we did 16 right whale presentations to clubs, museums, schools, and civic organizations. Our annual right whale baby shower celebrates new calves and their mothers and wish them safe travels as they return north. Our 30-foot right whale, which was in the Shrimp Festival this year, created tremendous awareness, and we've done something similar to that every year. Every fall, we sponsor Right Whale Week in Fernandina Beach, which involves engaging merchants and taverns and restaurants to spread awareness of the right whales. Now, affiliating with the Collaboratory last winter has really enhanced our effectiveness and given us confidence to carry on with our mission. Our monthly calls on the Collaboratory are rich with updates and the sharing of ideas. For example, the Georgia Conservancy shared their artwork for their Go Slow signage, which will be posted at major marinas along the east coast of Florida, as well as Georgia. We're copying some communication methods that Georgia's 100 miles has used so effectively. The Natural Resource Defense Council and others have kept us up to date on critical legislative issues. And they have issued several timely sign-on letters where we can do our small part in this complicated realm of government. We've also used our local knowledge just recently to brainstorm with Greg Criley and Moses to explore the potential locations for AIS antennas along the southeast coast. In return, we've created and shared our event ideas that bring our community and the southeast region together in support of these critically endangered marine mammals. Together, the Collaboratory is becoming an important voice in right whale protection in the southeast. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candace. That was a wonderful update. And if anyone has not been to the Right Whale Festival on Amelia Island, it is highly recommended. It is an extremely well-attended event, rich with both information and fun. I definitely recommend trying to attend at some point. At this point, I'll turn it over to Julie Albert to continue with efforts coming from Florida. Julie?
No, Diane Storage. Yeah, there's a meeting. Well, it's a Capitol Hill Ocean meeting. Okay. That's what Diane's doing, I think. Okay, so I'll leave that in there. Maybe just crowd it.
Julie, do we have you? And if participants could please mute. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So I'm Julie Albert. I'm with the Blue World Research Institute and the Right Whale Sighting Network. For the last 25 years, I've been educating the public on how to spot right whales and report their sightings so that we can get that information to the ports and the vessels on the water. We are currently working on getting signs into beachfront parks to educate the shoreline users on best practices out there so that they know to just give the whales their space, and especially if they have calves, to just keep their distance. We originally started this program back in 1995 to work with Port Canaveral, which is now the busiest cruising port in the world, to make sure they knew where the whales were so they could steer clear of them. We also work with the other ports in Northeast Florida and Southern Georgia to make sure they get the information for where the whales are. We are in the critical habitat area, but on the very southern end. And any sightings that we typically verify are in areas that are not covered by aerial surveys. So we've got about 75 miles of coastline that is within the critical habitat that is not surveyed by anybody other than coastal residents and visitors that we've trained or have just happened to come across a whale and wondered what they could do to report it. So mostly we do education, but we are collecting data and making sure that gets to the New England Aquarium in Boston as well.
Great. Thank you, Julie. Moving up the coast, we have Courtney Reich, the Coastal Director of Georgia Conservancy. Courtney?
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thanks to everybody who took the time to join the call. The Georgia Conservancy is a state-based, donor-supported nonprofit. We've been around for almost 60 years now, since our founding in 1967, if I remember that correctly. Our mission here is to protect Georgia through ecological and economic solutions for stewardship, conservation, and sustainable use of our natural resources. And we've actually had a long history that I've recently learned more about, advocating for the conservation of right whales that began when our coastal director, Hans Neuhauser, received a call from Kathy Sakis on about a neonatal right whale that had washed up on Little St. Simon's Island where Kathy was working. So we've long since been engaged in this effort, and we continue to be engaged. Some of the initiatives that we're working on that Greg briefly mentioned, we are currently working on a Sea Grant funded project to experiment with on-demand gear for the Black Sea bass fishery. This initiative is unique in that we're working directly with fishermen. Fishermen are a key component of this project. They are the ones working with experimenting and modifying the gear, working with our scientific partners, Kim Sawicki, on that project. And we're having a lot of success. We're very excited to roll those results out here soon. Also working on, or have previously worked with, our local artistic community to develop the signage that Greg showed you earlier, with the idea that we want to engage folks that are at the marinas. There's sometimes a lot of signage pollution. So having something that's visually appealing that will draw people in and also communicate a simple message informing people about the presence of right whales here in our southern waters from November to April, and asking them to go slow. And then finally, working with the rest of this collaborative, same as Candace and other partners, on identifying locations for the equipment, the AIS equipment and network that you're about to see. So far, we've had success identifying potential locations on 6 of our 9 front barrier islands, which we're very excited about. And it's, I think we're going to have a lot of interested parties in this equipment. So looking forward to hearing what Moses has to say. And I will add, Greg, too, that we've really appreciated the opportunity to be a part of the Collaboratory, having the support of our partners, being able to have people to reach out to when you need assistance. It just makes all of what we do that much more effective and makes us all stronger. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for being here today, Courtney. I'll pass it on now to Francine Kershaw, NRDC. Francine?
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. And it really is a pleasure to be on this panel with you all and speak to everyone today. Thanks so much for joining. I know there's some competing priorities at CHOW, so I appreciate you all being here. So in contrast to some of the other groups, NRDC's work on North Atlantic right whales has had a national focus to date, with some international work to protect the species when they're in Canadian waters as well. And when I joined the NRDC Marine Mammal Protection Project in 2015, we were mostly focused on protecting right whales from oil and gas development and underwater noise pollution. But the high number of deaths of right whales observed in 2017, which triggered NIMS to declare an unusual mortality event for the species that's continuing till today, led to our expanding our work to also help address the two main threats to the species. So there's the entanglement in fishing gear and vessel strikes. So you may be wondering why I was invited to participate in a Southeast Collaboratory and this panel. And it's because I relocated to South Carolina in 2020. And I'm sure you can guess why that might have happened in that particular year. And I was eager to start connecting with right whale champions in the new community that I found myself in, and was very fortunate that the Collaboratory already existed and that I was invited to join. And you know, from my perspective of someone working in this space, it was such an important step for me to better understand the synergies and connectedness between national level work and work that happens at the regional and local level. The outcomes that we want Congress to take or the administration to take to protect whales really starts with people learning about the issue and then expressing their concerns to their local decision makers, you know, telling their friends, you know, be it at the local, state, or federal level. And I've seen that enough of those voices being heard really does make a huge difference in our collective ability to move the needle on the issues that we really care about. So NRDC has been working with the Collaboratory in several really neat ways that we would not have had the opportunity to do otherwise. So one thing, and Candace alluded to this, one thing that we've been able to offer the group is a regular update on the key issues and advocacy needs that are coming up in DC and on the Hill, and that national groups are coordinating around, and also providing talking points that Southeast-based groups can draw from in their own outreach to local or state decision makers, or for editorials or other grassroots efforts. And this just helps ensure that we all, you know, stay coordinated and have a more impactful message. And this conversation has absolutely been a two-way street with, you know, other groups in the Collaboratory sharing what they are hearing in their conversations and making recommendations that we can then incorporate into, you know, the more national level strategies. And also sharing updates on the really inspiring local events like the baby shower, you know, that our groups can help then amplify nationally and help broaden the public education impact. And as an example, just quickly, you know, I've seen working in this type of coordinated way has really helped strengthen our community's advocacy to finalize the new vessel speed rule, which is, you know, still pending, but urgently needed to slow vessels down to reduce vessel strike risk. And you know, this risk is present everywhere, but it's perhaps the most acute in the Southeast calving and nursery grounds where moms and calves are particularly at risk. And then another area where we've been working, as Courtney mentioned, we've joined several of the groups working to support on-demand gear testing and fishing in partnership with the fishers in the Southeast Black Sea Bass fishery. And then a number of groups have kind of worked together and pooled resources to help secure the ropeless gear that's being ropeless or on-demand gear that's been used by the fishery, so they can have ownership of it and continue to use it into the future. And then with our partner Animal Welfare Institute, and I saw at least one staff member, Kate O'Connell, is on the line from AWI. We showcased the website that our groups developed together called thefutureisropeless.org at the North Atlantic Right Whale Festival in November last year, to help educate seafood consumers and seafood retailers and buyers about opportunities to help advance ropeless gear. And I have to say, the location of the festival just off the beach where moms and calves are known to hang out was just amazing. And I think being in a location like that makes it all the more easy for us to convey, you know, the importance of the message to the public and the folks that we're talking to. And just finally and quickly helping to currently explore potential locations for AIS antenna in the Charleston area. And Greg and Moses are going to expand more on that project in a few minutes. So yeah, I've just been so kind of taken with I think the connectedness between people and between people and place in the Southeast, that it's actually given me a lot of hope that we can actually achieve the enduring protections that we need for this incredible animal to survive. So huge thanks to everyone in the Collaboratory. And yeah, thank you again, Greg, for inviting us to speak today.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate those words. I hope that gave everyone a nice introduction to just a small subset of the membership of our collaborative. This collaborative is open. If there are other members, other people that would like to participate in the collaborative, reach out. I'll make sure that you have my contact info, and we'd be happy to have additional members. As I began, I represent IFAW in the Southeast, and our priority campaign right now is the North Atlantic right whale here in the United States. As part of that, of course, in the Southeast, we do have a fishery that has some entanglement risk, but vessel strikes are far and away the primary threat to the species here in southern waters. IFAW's priority initiative at this time in the Southeast is promoting automated and targeted dissemination of information to mariners, and that in our hopes and our view, that would include information about the regulatory areas and their transit, particularly speeds through those zones, and to the extent that is possible, also communicating that there's been recent whale activity in an area, so that mariners are encouraged to exercise increased caution. We had a test over the winter with impressive results in Cape Cod that we're very excited about. We are funding, IFAW is funding an additional transceiver at Tybee Island Marine Science Center as part of their very impressive right whale exhibit called The Right Whale to Save. If you're ever in the Savannah Tybee area, please stop in at the Tybee Island Marine Science Center to take a look at that. And at this point, I'll pass it on to Moses Caloro, the president of Maritime Information Systems, who brought this opportunity, this initiative to our attention, and who we've been very honored to work with over the past year to promote this effort. Moses?
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate the introduction. Again, Moses Caloro, Maritime Information Systems. I'll go briefly through the company. We started in 1995 as a web application development company, moved into vessel tracking in 2006 when AIS was required internationally on vessels over 300 gross tons, and then later to 65 feet and above, certain types of vessels. And we graduated into aircraft tracking in 2016, and currently have 650 locations around the country that have tracking capabilities. So we backhaul information and display it to mariners and aviators on the screen, shoreside affinity, etc. We became involved with the right whale issues probably back in 2008 when we provided data to the New England Aquarium and to some other organizations to help with identifying the locations of vessels in relation to the right whale. And since that time, have always been interested in the issues. I live in Cape Cod, and that's primarily in the news when the whales are in the area. And the mortality event was a major concern and ongoing. And so always trying to find ways to help, find a way to provide solutions that would be useful. Was involved in a project up in Portland, and a group came together. Some of the folks here that in this meeting were there as well, and formulated some concepts, some ideas about how to reduce vessel strikes. The main issue is reaching vessels. So seasonal management areas, dynamic management areas, reaching those vessels in enough time for them to make a decision. We immediately looked at it, or it's been looked at for many years, but it's been a struggle to get it in place in such a way that it's available across the coast. And so we developed a prototype with the help of Stellwagen National Marine Sanctuary, the United States Coast Guard, IFAW, and tested, as Greg was mentioning, starting on January 30th. And that same day when we lit off the equipment, we had an immediate vessel that tripped through the zone over speed briefly, and we're able to send a message to that vessel automatically and receive an automatic response as well. And for days we tested, you'll see here on the lower right-hand side, we sent a message to a research vessel, the RD Auk, while it was underway, sending without the vessel actually making any configuration changes to its own equipment. So over the airwaves, the captain had to do nothing, but the screen lit up with a message. And so we further took the system between January 30th and when the SMA was ended in May of this year, and we're able to get to the point where there were, as you can see, we had 6 vessels that were sent speed warnings. 5 quickly became compliant after receiving the overspeed message. So we were able to document, messages sent to the vessels receiving those messages, and then vessels acting accordingly. The system consists of antenna cabling in a box that sits inside, connects to internet and power. And we need to do this 130 times across the U.S. East Coast in order to cover the whole coast, every 10 nautical miles. And so working with a collaborative in the Southeast, it's immediately clear. We only spoke to them a couple of weeks ago that they've dug up many of the locations that are needed in only a short span of time. And so we're very confident that in the coming weeks and coming months, we can identify suitable locations to provide the coverage necessary to send messages to vessels that are within 20 nautical mile range of one of the dam zebras. I can stop there and if there are any questions, I can pass it on to Peter Cola that might have some information that he can also share.
Do we have Captain DeCola on board?
Yep, I'm online here. If you can you bring up those 2 slides I sent you, Greg? Because I think this is just a really solid example of real-time compliance. Just by putting information on systems that mariners use. We use, we have a right whale corporate responsibility program here. We send letters every year, letting people know how they've complied with SMA rules for the SMAs that overlap Stellwagen. That's sort of an after the fact notification. And while we get a lot of compliance because people know we're watching, a lot of the first timers, you'll notice here, the first timers and the majority of people who don't comply are basically new to the port. And with a lot of turnover for the port each year, we end up with a significant component of vessels transiting through Stellwagen and Cape Cod Bay that don't necessarily comply, not because they don't want to, but just because they're not aware of the regulations. We also have a whale alert, which is an app that it's on my phone here. It's a very effective tool, and both of these are a result of partnerships with IFAW and the Volgino Foundation and all of our partners here and working with Mo. But the problem with whale alert is you need internet connection to connectivity, which vessels at sea don't always have. The beauty of this AIS messaging system is it provides connectivity underway. It fills that gap between notifying people via letter a year later, and that gives them immediate feedback on compliance. So this is a great example. The strategic entity was let's see, I forget what day. This is I think at the end of February. February 28th at 8:38 p.m. the vessel was transiting through the speed management area at 12 knots. At 8:36, a notification was sent out from our tower in Scituate. And then if you go to the next slide, Greg, at 8:45, the vessel was compliant. And this is a first timer. This is one of those vessels, they probably didn't have whale alert app on board, but the vessel was almost immediately in compliance, which is what we're looking for here. We're just looking for vessels to slow down and minimize the likelihood of a vessel strike. So, we're really pleased with the way this has worked out. It's been a great partnership, as it always is, with Mo and IFAW and everyone else that we work with. So, I'm not sure if I could end, but the was a massive success, and we're looking forward to adding more towers up here as well, so that we can cover the entire range of where the right whales feed up here. happy to answer any questions on the experiment that was performed up in Stillwagon.
Thank you, Captain. I hope that gave everyone a great introduction to this initiative for AIS messaging. We think that it has great potential to encourage more cooperation and compliance with speed restrictions, and to inform mariners who, as Captain DeCola indicated, many may not be aware of either the regulation or the plight of the species. It also, we believe, has potential to aid NOAA in enforcing the rule when appropriate, because this notifies mariners of the rule, and they will be able to see those notifications that have gone out. And if the results out of Cape Cod are replicable along the coast, this project will have a significant positive impact to conservation of the species. We're very encouraged that this project, that this capability will come online. We have been working and have had excellent relationships and encouraging feedback from NOAA officials in the Northeast, at the national level, in the Northeast office and the Southeast office. And we expect this to move forward. We're very, very encouraged by that. And at this point, I'd like to open it up if any of the participants, if any of the folks that have joined in have questions they'd like to pose to any of the members.
Hey, Greg, if I could just make one more point. The last
Sure.
bullet in the slide here talks about other potential uses. This is sort of a quantum leap forward in maritime communication, using AIS for this, to communicate to vessels at sea. It's a two-way system. It can be used for a whole host of other purposes that aren't right whale related, but are definitely important, such as protecting shipwrecks, keeping fishing vessels out of closed areas, and most importantly, we talked about the other thing we talked about. Next slide, if you can go to the next slide, marking ropeless fishing gear with virtual aids to navigation, which is something Moses is working diligently toward getting that capability up in Provincetown, so that we can work together with the Fishery Science Center up here and their ropeless gear library and their experimental fishery they have that occurs in Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, so that we can mark the gear virtually and everyone will be able to see it because it'll be on a chart. So, which is one of the challenges of ropeless gear. So we're really just thrilled with the potential here for maritime communications and expanding this use to other areas.
Yeah, thank you for adding that in, Captain. That's a great point. Captain DeCola and I are both retired Coast Guard officers, and I think we both recognized immediately that such a system would have a wide range of application, not just for the protection of this species, which is the issue that is hopefully going to make this a reality, but it could be used for safety and security zones, for marine casualties, for extreme weather events. The National Weather Service is interested in using such to send targeted weather alerts to vessels. There are just a host of other uses for such a system. So that's a great addition. I do have some questions here. The first one is from Jake Swanson. Do these compliance numbers contradict Oceana's report that most boats are speeding through designated slow zones? I think I could speak to that briefly, and then I'll open it up to any of our other panel members that would like to speak on it. So Oceana's compliance numbers, there are a number of ways to look at transit data through the seasonal management areas. Oceana's numbers are accurate in that they count the number of vessels that exceed 10 knots through right whale habitat, regulated right whale habitat, the seasonal management areas and the dynamic management areas, which are now, of course, voluntary. I don't think, I'm not sure the compliance numbers that you're speaking about, if that's related to the test. Cape Cod Bay actually has higher compliance numbers than many other areas of the country, which is one of the reasons that we wound up with not as many opportunities to urge vessels to slow down as we would have liked. But even in that area that has high compliance numbers, the vessels that were reached out, almost all of them slowed to compliance to compliant speeds. And compliant, of course, is a bit of a loaded term in relation to this regulation, because there is a safe navigation exemption for vessels that legitimately need to transit at higher speeds in order to prevent a different type of collision or grounding, etc. I hope that answered your question, but I'm not sure. If any of our panel members have anything to add, please do. All right. We have a question from the Marine Mammal Commission. Do the vessels need to have any special equipment to receive notifications? That's a great question. So the current regulation applies to vessels 65 feet and up. That is aligned with carriage requirements for AIS, which stands for Automatic Information Systems. So all the vessels that are covered under the current regulation do not need anything new to receive these messages. In addition to that, through other partnerships that we've developed, one primary being the WAVES Task Force, the Whale and Vessel Safety Task Force, we're working with Garmin, with Yamaha Motors, Viking Yachts, Navionics, Simrad, Lowrance, many marine equipment manufacturers. And the output of the algorithm that detects vessels coming in and decides whether they need a message sent, that can be sent through the AIS network. It can also be sent through really any other communication method. And so those equipment manufacturers are looking at ways to include those notices in their internet-based updates, and also a significant number of modern marine electronics, the consumer grade that you would find at, say, West Marine, have at least received capabilities for AIS. So there is a potential for the system to, on some sort of interval, kind of broadcast an informational message out to any vessel that can receive. So we expect that this system would cover all of the vessels that are required to slow to 10 under the current regulation. We are hopeful that the revised regulation will be implemented before the next calving season, and that will drop that size limitation down to 35 feet as currently written and proposed. We expect a significant number of those vessels to also be able to receive messages, even though they are not required to have the gear. And again, if anyone has anything to add, please do. We have a question. What are the current challenges for implementing this technology on a widespread scale? What would the projected timeline look like? I might pass that on to Moses because he's got the detail on that. That is absolutely in his wheelhouse.
Yes, so the issues are funding and to a degree, but location. So locations, as I mentioned, one every 10 nautical miles along the U.S. East Coast. So identifying and installing and ramping up. That's basically it. So right now we're in the process of permitting. I skipped a step. So we are in the process of finalizing the permit applications with the Coast Guard. It'll then go to the FCC for their side of the approval, and then the locations would be installed and then operational. We could have a fair amount up and running before the calving season, but it kind of depends on funding and input from federal, state, and local agencies.
Thank you. And I think meeting participants can see the chat. If you are able to see the chat, there are links also to NOAA's compliance numbers. It should be noted that there is some divergence between, say, Oceana's compliance numbers and NOAA's compliance numbers, and that gets to how it is measured. Oceana measures any vessel that exceeds that limit that would be covered under the regulation, and they report that as non-compliant. NOAA measures the number of essentially the distance traveled at compliant speeds, and so NOAA's numbers will are higher than Oceana's. So NOAA has about 80% compliance they're showing, whereas Oceana is significantly lower than that. Both of those methodologies, the data is correct. Neither one of them are telling stories, but they are measuring differently. And you can imagine the way that I look at it. NOAA's measuring risk through the zone. So how many miles were spent compliant versus non-compliant. And Oceana is measuring by vessel. Did the vessel exceed the speed at any given time? And reasonable people could disagree about whether either is the correct way to measure, but they are both accurate in the way that they do it. To receive an AIS message, vessels need to be equipped with an AIS transponder that is on. That is a great point. Some vessels are known to turn off, to kind of ghost themselves, and that is a particular challenge. There's in a lot of situations that is a challenge, but that is an enforcement challenge. And unfortunately, our time is up. I want to thank everyone who dialed in. I want to especially our panel participants for dialing in. And please reach out if you have additional questions that I can answer. I can be reached at GREILLY@ifaw.org. Thank you all so much.